Okay, so it turns out I really hate editing videos. Well, I just don't have too much time for it, and it is a shame because I did make a couple of neat presets for it, but it was taking so long and I wasn't enjoying the process. I just wanted to move on and to my painting and drawing, and I was even doing quite a bit of research on topics I already knew, but I sometimes less is way more. Just like keep it simple, stupid. So I am going to make this video as bare bones and straight to the point as I possibly can. Though, not gonna lie, I am quite tired of people just whining on the internet and all these discussions that mostly happen on Twitter. They are mostly the biggest crybabies, to be fair. It is Twitter, the best and most civilized and smart and best to bring everyone together to agree. Yeah, right. Thanks a lot for that, Americans from the United States. But first, I don't want to acknowledge the elephant of the room that it's probably expected from me as an artist. I want to recognize that yes, artists have been done incredibly dirty. A lot of art has been stolen. Mine has probably been stolen too. And I'm just a little person in my own corner. And yes, there are these assholes who think they're better than you and everyone and think they're owed the recognition for giving the idea to something else. To be fair, I do find AI bros to be kind of like hackers on online games. They think they're playing the game, but something else is doing it for them, and they're screwing everyone over until an actual 5,000-hour cycle puts them on their place. The same happens with art. These motherfuckers think they're hot shit until it's really time to prove themselves. They actually lack the abilities and comprehension skills and what makes good art. And the second they turn that off, they'll be faced with the reality and they'll be caught with their pants down. I wish there were more videos besides the ones from the art community talking about the issues with AI, uh, because I do think there's a very huge difference between AI did this versus someone who used AI did this, and well, YouTube does rely a lot on clickbait and all this stuff. I just wish people just pointed the fingers at the real culprits here. Because literally everything has been scraped from the internet: historical and scientific facts, books, opinions, art, documentation, and for some stupid reason, they also scraped fan fiction. Like, there isn't even a whole lot of money or good writing in there. One of the places where in the digital space where it's being done more damage is on Facebook, where older generations or populations of different countries that are like first world countries are just taking these pictures at face value because it's pretty enough, and that's pretty much what art looks like in their heads, like a pretty incomprehensible mess. Or probably they believe that Jesus is everywhere, or that you can pet sharks. Another thing that worries me is about historical pictures also be put into content forms, and if you don't get what this is so worrying, it's basically gaslighting, but for people who are just far too complacent about being given anything on the internet or giving any sort of information. And you know how people just tend to think of history looks like this fantasy Victorian-esque version of an alternate reality? Well, it's that, but on steroids. Yet the people behind these farms, they're not educated enough to give a shit. The world be damned except for them and their bank accounts. And yeah, this is pretty bad. There's no worry or concern or just care that they're literally washing history and giving it to people, and they're just eating that shit up. Uh, well, to be honest, the people behind that, they're just as guilty as the people like making all these factory low grade products. And man, whoever expected Ghibli to become so easily reproduced? That's like a wet dream from the corporate. It's so in vogue to do your own Ghibli picture. Like, oh my god! In fact, when I was heading out to find a place to print some copies of stuff, some random woman had in her photos a picture of her and what I'm assuming was her boyfriend. Giblified, of course. Like a cheap card you get for on the store, like a party card. It's not my place to judge something like that, but yeah, it's the cool thing fellow kids are up to these days. Though it's ironic that the man who fought for art to be treated as seriously and with dignity without living intellectualism is now one of the cheapest things to emulate. I am wondering though, because it's not like Ghibli doesn't have its fair share of merchandise, and, like its own supermarket party cards. Because let's be honest, movie ticket sales just don't cut it enough for studios. They have to sustain themselves. Not to say they don't deserve being able to make more money, on the contrary, but I am questioning the nature of merchandise. I mean, when you do love something, you want more of it, but doesn't that dilute the nature of the artwork? The fact that there is so much merchandise and advertising, doesn't that oversimplify the meaning of such icons and characters and narrative and story? Maybe, but I'm certain that it doesn't. That it really shouldn't. But I wouldn't be surprised that doing this actually gives people the wrong impression. They just see the money. They never actually care why the symbols are as beloved, but because it's not held sacred like a holy sanctuary, they just think, oh, it's just another product. We can just abuse the system as well. I did mention this because it was fairly recent, but let's not forget they attempted this with Pixar too. For as many crimes as they did as a studio, and well, it's mostly Disney, I don't think that was deserved either. And yes, these pictures sucked, but how did we not see this coming considering they did this with Pixar before? Speaking of other ways to make money and products and merchandise, have you dug deep enough in Amazon and Etsy? There is a lot of junk in there. The crochet community were probably one of the monks to point out the issue, especially on my YouTube feed. There is also a lot of channels unrelated to art, and I don't see enough of them. They're also complaining how the misuse of these technologies to make more scams on these websites. I like there's even people who are trying to sell books about foraging. Do you know how dangerous that is? No, thankfully, I do believe that the books that were pointed out in this video that I'm going to put on screen actually got deleted. But man, these people are just, they're rabid. They don't care. Hell, even gamers are being assaulted by AI slop, especially in the computer market, and you'll be surprised because they actually tend to agree with artists a lot more. And they absolutely hate this. Because, well, gamers actually do know that video games can be art. They know how unique an experience it can be. And they just see these lazy assholes trying to mass produce any product as fast as they can, like throwing it like a spaghetti to a wall to see what sticks. And they're just not having it because these people do not care for video games, and gamers know because gamers just want a good fucking game with a good fucking gameplay and good fucking music. They're not going to take this, and they're actually starting to speak out as well. And there are these other issues that were brought with AI, but not necessarily made by AI. In fact, AI has nothing to do with this. Do you remember that one time there was a bunch of live streamers and apparently one of their friends was caught with on their live stream with a pornographic page, and apparently in that page he had a bunch of his female co-workers with deepfakes placed on top of adult actresses. And it wasn't just one, it wasn't just these live streamers, it was also apparently other women we don't know about. For whatever fantasies these people have. Again, it can even be women who might not necessarily be YouTubers or influencers, but had enough footage of themselves to be given enough food for abominations to be created. And that's probably the least egregious versions. We don't know what's actually happening on darker areas on the internet. Have you ever heard of accounts of people who might actually fall in love with AI already? That's character AI. Uh, just having conversations with characters that are so accurate, but almost too perfect, and yet not that well regulated. This 14-year-old ended his own life after a long conversation with a bot. Uh, it was perfect. Like, it enabled everything about him. It never questioned him. I guess it must have been freeing for to have somebody, or at least a pretend somebody that actually tells yes to all of you until you decide to say no to you. And that's the thing with enabling, he doesn't actually care about you, and they'll say yes to you until there's nothing to say yes to. And unfortunately, a lot of these sites do have quite a bit of teenagers, probably children and young adults, maybe, just throwing themselves into this. It's no longer the quirky chatbot EV that you saw PewDiePie with, and there isn't any of these silly responses that you totally know came from another person trying to troll the chatbot. No, these characters are emulating the characters like almost too perfectly. On the other hand, I just don't believe that children and teenagers should be on the internet at all, because they're on a very vital part of their lives where they need to socialize, and no matter how much you try to cope that it's not a need or you have to rest or something like that, it's a very ingrained human need that came from our ancestors. There were a bunch of monkeys, and they're like a pack animal type of thing. I don't know if pack is the correct word, but in their desperate need to try and find where to belong or just a friend to socialize, talk about interest, or just play, they would end up falling on these places, and it it's probably screwing them over because these chatbots do not even talk like real people. They talk like an RP is going on, like all the time. I just don't think this is the way. It's also not the young, it's also the adults. Even the adults are strongly defined relationships or even trying to participate in its complexity. Hell, there are even AI therapists for those struggling even to speak to another human trained to hear you. There are applications with fake companions and personalities, and I don't know, at the very least a few of them do have like paywall sex with bots. Like, they just feel very predatory, and even character AI also has like a paywall. You can only interact with characters for a certain amount of time until it asks you to pay. If somebody is desperate enough and has stolen somebody's credit card, that is not going to go well at all. But that's the thing, isn't it? The thing behind all of these issues that we blame AI is at fault with. We say, oh, AI generated images are bad, or oh, AI chatbots are bad. But we're not really pointing the finger at all the people behind this. And I just don't think it's just them on their own. There is this lack of care and compassion. I think our biggest issue is our lack of connection at a global scale. Yes, I am sounding very stupid, but I genuinely mean this. The loneliness epidemic, the narcissism epidemic, what are those but a lack of genuine connection and kindness? If the people behind these AI models gave an ounce of a shit for anyone in their and their best interests, because they care to listen, then none of this would have happened in the first place. It's old patterns, the othering of those outside your tribe, or in the attempt of keeping this tribe close, we often choose to lie about who we are, and in fear of not belonging, then another evil develops manipulation, one that leaves as many devastating consequences as the first. All of these options are just as lonely and disconnected from each other. They're cruel and uncaring. And again, it has happened through our history. These are super old patterns we haven't really worked through to this day. And they're just getting worse. Like, technology has done nothing but really show us a mirror of what we're becoming. We have been shown that being rude and loud and cruel is the only way to get attention online. It cultivates this narcissistic side of us. It also enables our psychopathy to hurt others, to project our own insecurities and escape the consequences unscathed. We shouldn't get to be hit for talking shit. And then it's no wonder why these obnoxious live streamers ended up in prison. These were problems that were cultivating over time. These are the narcissistic and the sociopaths who think this is okay. They're not connected. They don't care what they do to people. They don't care about the cultures they affected. But that's the thing about reality. Once they got out their homes, they got into jail. Also, people just tend to be really mean, especially online. It just becomes harder to associate humanity as a place where you can rely upon. Uh, there are some people that are born into terrible environments where kindness is pretty much non-existence, where every day is survival. And to be honest, to ask them to connect back again to the source of their pain, it's like asking somebody to drink the poison that has been killing them. So, yeah, sometimes disconnection becomes the only way they can feel safe. I understand that as well. But then, what happens when we allow these damaged people, these broken minds and hearts, to talk about what they perceive the world to be and allow them to be the leaders of the conversation, especially when it comes to men and women? Look at how many videos are of people trying to tease the opposite sex because they have unresolved issues with their parents or with whomever hurt them that badly. Uh, they're just trying to distort the conversation and try to drag as many people so their misery isn't alone. But it's generating even more toxicity. And, like, yes, this doesn't really have to do with AI, but all again, it's all these broken people hurting each other. Like, these people are hurt and they're generating even more hurt. All these feminists, all of these red pillars, they're not really working towards uniting men and women and helping each other to understand themselves better. That's just another part of the conversation of this whole disconnection. Men and women are having a harder time to understand themselves. And, well, technically, there is some AI involved if you take into account all these dating apps that I have never touched in my life, to be fair. But they have just lost it. They have lost the plot. They don't know how to date each other. They don't know how to court each other. They don't know how to even speak to each other and to ask for their needs. I don't think they even understand each other. Now, this is probably related to the issue that I mentioned before with character AI. But look at parents and their refusal to be with their own children. I don't entirely blame them, the working conditions are getting more ridiculous every day, and the inflation isn't stopping in any country whatsoever. But they don't even give themselves the chance to stay with their child and to understand them, to know what they need, So they just leave it to, to the tablet or to the phones. That's not the way to do it. That's just, it's literally making so much damage to the way these kids' brains work. Speaking of which, there has been recent research where it turns out that actually relying on technology and AI in itself, because you actually ask AI for ideas, is actually rotting your brain, like way more than brain rot content. Turns out you actually need to be making decisions every single day, that you actually have to mentally try and figure out solutions to problems. They're muscles too, man. Like, they're part of your body. Like, it's an organ that also needs to be taken care of as well. But no, apparently that even making decisions needs to be put into the algorithm, so it generates a solution or an idea of what you have to do with yourself and your own life. Hell, you don't even have to go too far to look at another example as how we are disconnected. Sometimes we also abandon our own little furry or feathery or leathery or scaly companions. And I don't mean the absolute worst cases, though they also count, where people are just dumping their animals in the middle of nowhere, not caring for their fates. But also, why do you think your pet is trying to take your attention away from the little light box on your hands? The one that you're using to avoid your life. Just for a few seconds of your attention. That sometimes you don't give them. Okay, so now what? Everyone is just as disconnected, just unwilling to understand and hear everyone else. Like, if this is the case, why the hell will anyone on earth be so willing to look at themselves at the mirror and try to be a good and better person? You cannot change anyone like that in a dime. Well, here's the secret. You don't. You, person who is watching the video, you decide to change. And in fact, when you decide to change and decide to help others change, you don't even need people to change. You inspire them to do so. Well, but what kind of idiot on the internet is trying to even tell me to change? Like, who the fuck are you? Like, why the hell are you even saying this? Well, I say this because I know these things are possible. And because I've been there. Because I know how much it feels to feel powerless. That no matter what you do, there is always an obstacle. That there is no people to actually choose and support you and hear you and be compassionate with you. Or they just end up choosing to just tell you to conform and do as they do, or to criticize you, to minimize you. And no matter how much you try to show them that you actually matter and that you are worth it, no, they make you feel as if the moment you were gone, no one would actually miss you. I was there. I was a person who used to be suicidal, deeply depressed. I didn't want anything. I was rotting away, especially when I was a teenager. I had I had parents who spent their days working endlessly, or they just weren't at home. And whenever I tried to express my own ideas, they didn't matter. I had to still do the things they wanted. I didn't want to, and they wouldn't hear me. And even needs that I would have would go unnoticed because they simply were not there. And if, of course, it even extended to beyond my parents, I was somebody who also got bullied in a very unique way where I was pretty much ignored. I was just literally in a corner where no one would talk to me. But despite all of this, despite the neglect that I had in my life, I know there's always a possibility to make a change. It sounds impossible, but it's not. And of course, it's going to hurt to get out of that state. It hurts, and things do not magically get resolved. In fact, sometimes it was a slog, and it took way too long. And your inner psyche just doesn't forgive and forget everything that has happened. You don't get to react a different way immediately. It's a progress. It actually takes being with yourself through the recovery process and discerning what is best for you. You should be the very last living being that should be abandoning even yourself. Know that I've talked about this disconnection and abandonment and hearing and listening and caring. The first person that you should be paying attention the most is yourself first. Because if you don't, it's going to sound dark, but the only thing that is left is for you to say goodbye to the world. Because then there's nothing to live for. I know I'm being selfish when I express my thoughts and desires, but I would personally like to live in a world where people are more kind, more compassionate, and understanding, but without leaving things behind, such as boundaries or being stern, or just calling things off when they aren't right. I am making this video because not only did I want to point the fingers at all of us and what we're doing with this technology, because AI is still incapable of making their own decisions to this day. And I am making you ask yourselves, what can I do? At the very least, if you don't end up doing anything at the very moment. But, man, even if there's nothing better to do, you can at the very least speak about the subject, give your own opinion, even if it's on the contrary side of this. Like, oh, you want to say like, no, I do believe that AI is actually very evil and it's going to be like Terminator and it's going to exterminate all of us, like the Dalek from Doctor Who when it was good. Yeah, that's pretty valid too. Or instead of trying to be on the internet, on the phone, on the computer, mea culpa as well, for at least 30 minutes less in a day. Even if you're doing something else, like maybe grab a book instead. I am trying to be more generalized and not just like talk about topics that pertain to the art community. Because I want everyone to realize they have a role to play and everyone is unique enough, and whatever ways that is, to contribute. If there's a topic out there that is vastly misunderstood, what's stopping anyone from trying to teach about it? To be so passionate, it ultimately becomes so contagious that people cannot help but fall in love with a subject. There's also another powerful thing that you can do. You have your wallet. You can choose what you support. You can always support the people that you genuinely consider are worth supporting, and this goes to anything in the market. You want to support small businesses, musicians, movies, games, clothing lines, food, whatever. You can donate even a small amount to a movement if you deem it necessary. You don't have to do it a big amount. Sometimes a single dollar. It's mostly like a voting system in a way. And this one should be obvious, but apparently people are doing this even less. I don't blame them. I was in a pretty terrible relationship where I was hearing a lot, but the other side would not ever hear me. They were quite selfish and just very needy, toxically so. But sometimes another simple but very powerful thing you can do is listen to other people. Yeah, some people just like venting for the sake of it. But you can just listen to what they care about their motives, their desires, their hopes. their hobbies. Start paying attention to people because, well, you also note that some of them might actually be paying attention back to you. How can you even know if you're not paying attention? Also, pay more attention to which groups or people creating things out there are going to help for everyone. Because even artists, if they're just making something that just makes you smile, their work is very different. They're not meant to have a tangible uh, result, but just noticing the fake scams from the real people might actually make a huge difference. You know what this requires also? Actually, start feeding yourself with more information and other points of view. Not just be so complacent with everything, not even with what I'm saying. Like, actually formulate your own opinion, like, explore your own feelings, even with the things that I'm saying. Like, is it stupid? Is it smart? Is it revolutionary? Or it's like the worst thing that ever since, like, the second thing from the 1940s? I don't know. You tell me. Think for yourself. And yeah, but open also, like, to other points of view, like, discern this information and actually process it, like, think about it. Yes, some people are too tired to think about it, and the only thing they want to do is take a break and just rest. But I don't think with all these scams that's going to be allowed for too long. And who knows, when you compare all of this information and you either combine it to find the truth or discern, again, which version of the truth is better, you'll grow a lot smarter and a lot less harder to manipulate. All of these things, all of these scams, and other companies who are pretty much doing the same but less spammy, you become harder to manipulate, and that shit's good. They don't want. People want sheeps. Don't become a sheep yourself. Now, this is mostly for artists who might stumble upon this video, but I just do not think that AI in itself has been as bad as we have made it out to be. It is only as bad as the people who made all these scams and exploitative content. But we're not sure what's going to be the extent of this because it's still being developed. Yes, the stock value is nowhere in price, but I am sure there's still a lot of money behind it. They're still trying to develop it, and I don't think it's gonna stop. There's way too much money. Stopping it right now, it would have been it's devastating for the people who invested so much. That it's unstoppable, but that doesn't mean it's bad. And at the very least, in these early stages of AI, there can be some interesting ideas, and that's the only thing that I can actually give proper credit to, because it doesn't quite do the job all the way there yet, and it doesn't actually quite know what it's doing. Some things it can do all right, and I do know for a fact that for mathematics it's actually pretty good at, but not a lot of people are using it for that, are they? But because artists are so willing to sometimes accept that every once in a while, the machine, not the person trying to pass themselves as the creator, because they totally weren't doing any of that. Sometimes he has really good ideas. Sometimes he makes really good, aesthetically pleasing photography that are actually cool. And it's very hard to admit that because you're like, oh, yeah, but what about me? But do not take it personally. AI, these people behind you, don't take it as if they're personally attacking you, personally telling you, hey, I am going to replace you and you're not worth anything. That's their issue. They're the ones who feel useless because they cannot draw. They're the ones who feel replaceable because they cannot bring anything to the table. Well, the machine that they're fucking abusing is. And this is again from the gamer side of things, or game development side of things, like because they also understand AI and programming. AI is involved in NPCs and mechanics and whatnot. In that area, they're inescapable again. But even then, they have discussed that it doesn't. It's not a great idea to utilize AI for to create a game, but it should remain in this place where people are allowed to mess around with it. And I think it would be great if we also discern who is just trying to mess around with it and trying to share, hey, I had a cool idea. I don't think it's worth investing too much time in this idea. I just think it was neat. And I just wanted to share this with the world. To the people who are literally either trying to have some sort of gain by other, monetarily gain with all the scams, or fame by trying to pretend they're artists without ever saying anything for themselves. But I typed the prompt. You gave the idea to somebody, to something else. The idea is no longer yours. It's from the AI. Shut the fuck up. Sit down and actually write what you want to say, or draw it, or sculpt it. Do not let anything speak for you, okay? Ever. You're not the artist. You're a person hiding behind the technology. That's directly to anybody who thinks they are like AI artists. No, you're a coward who cannot speak ever. You're too afraid. And that's something I will never take. On the other hand, I do choose to be open about the AI, even generating pictures, because not all people who are using it, like, I do know there's at the very least a few artists that are trying to experiment with it and trying to integrate it into the art. Like, they have the picture and then they modify it and paint on top of it. And for that, I'm like, okay, I personally wouldn't use it. I don't see how to integrate it with my work. I'm more of a hand drawn from the start to finish type of girl in this regard. But of course, there's this always side of things of like, okay, you had an idea and you're sharing it online. Why would you do that? Like, our subconscious is very chitsy doodly, because when we think we're just sharing, in reality, we might have been, trying to get attention that we didn't get as children. It's also possible. But again, discern the motives of these people, because not everyone is trying to to remove your job. And if you think an idea that somebody had like was better if an artist did it, well, guess what? Do it yourself. It's not like you don't have a unique perspective from the one that was presented. You know? Come on. No, I did mention and pointed out a few things that had to do with our psychology, and what we can do to certainly avoid this. And I certainly skipped all the process to get to there to begin with. But this is in the video for it. I don't. Otherwise, it would have been like too long, like hours, days long. But sometimes the easiest thing you can do, the biggest psychological trick, is to say, what if this time actually something good happens? Yes, I know there's a voice within you that says, no, it's gonna be the same, it's gonna be a disappointment. But just tell it, how the fuck do you know? And if the answer is like, oh, because of this time, yeah, but how the fuck do you know that this time is this way? What if you're wrong this time? What if it's the opposite? And you won't know until you try it. Come on, we're in modern times. Dare yourself to think a little bit like a scientist. Make various tests by that I mean attempts or tries. And if they're all the same result, well, stop doing the same shit. That's madness. You know, I am going to try, not even try, actually do some of the things that I have been preaching. In this case, I don't need that much information. I do have a few weak spots, but I do stay far too long in the internet. The thing that I need to do the most now is actually go and touch some grass. I do live in an area with that there is, well, dry grass. It's something, but you know, I have been applying some of these things. Like, well, whenever there's cultural expositions in my state, I like to buy stuff that people who do arts or crafts make. Like it can be earrings or I don't know, necklaces or I don't know what's the thing that goes in your wrist. I forgot the name of it. I like to do the things that they do, or maybe it's new clothing that's made from indigenous groups in my dear Mexico. I also like to. I haven't really quite donated a lot of money. I had an opportunity one time, but I actually forgot. When I see another project from artists that I can see they are open to be donated, I want to do that. But at the release, I have started to buy more music albums from artists that I really enjoy. I have to say this because we Mexicans and Latin Americans are very we are leaning, we like piracy a little bit too much, and I'm not different. But I am very proud of myself because I am breaking the stereotype and I am actually buying music from my favorite artist. In this case, it's called Kubi. It's one of my favorite chiptune slash digital music artists. And if I can, I also want to recommend their music. It's on YouTube as well, so you can go listen to them right now. It's really good. It's really wholesome. It's really cool and shit. And man, I should also start listening to other people. I have fallen a little bit behind with it because, again, I did have a terrible relationship that did hurt me badly. And hearing people was just difficult because the person that I was with was just a burden. They were a burden. They were horrible and they were so negative. So I would just soak all of this energy. But, you know, that isn't always the case. And I'm going to share this one, this last account, as to why people can still be amazing. I was at Plaza de Armas. Did look very underwhelming. Like his working vest was kind of dirty, his shirt was old and had like some stitches coming out. And I was drawing on a bank because yeah, I was studying. And he just looked at my artwork and he actually started telling me his life. He was terrible at speaking, actually. He didn't have like a huge vocabulary. It was either limited. I don't know if it was like some sort of condition or his education was pretty low. But he was a musician. He probably speaks with his music, not his mouth. And this man proceeds to tell me that he was a mariachi. And not only that, that he got to travel the world. And in particular, he had these three countries he told me in specific. Like he traveled to Japan, to China, and to Russia. He didn't know how to speak any of those languages, but he was able to go there. And he even encouraged me to go there. It was pretty special, the conversation. I was pretty uncomfortable as well because he just sort of arrived and started talking. But this person, this man, he could barely talk. He was clumsy. He was awful at talking. But this man had lived way more than I ever had. He has seen way more than me. Somebody who has been on the internet for way too long. And I want to leave you with that. Maybe you meet somebody like that. Somebody who seems very unremarkable. Just kind of unimpressive or kind of disappointing, but you don't know who they are. Maybe they are actually a wonderful person, and they sounded like that too, because they were telling me something quite nice. They told me to get out of this place and travel the world like they did. It wasn't a negative comment, it was positive. It was hopeful, and I hope that I at the very least inspire people to just look at themselves and say, I want to do something different today. Yes, these are my ideals in my head, but you know, what other ideas do you have too to try and help? Say, well, I think that maybe we should, go to therapy, or maybe we should start waking up at 5 a.m. 5 a.m. of the fucking morning and start doing exercise because that shit activates you or something. If you're like that, I'm going to assume you're a military person and that you're nuts. But yeah, this is the end of the video. After this, I have to work on my comic, on my art too. Probably chill out and not do for a distant hour and actually play just a little bit more with my dogs. They deserve it. They're cute. They're wholesome. They're my sweet little pampuglis. I. That's it. See you later, alligator. And man, start with little things. Little things to make life easier, life kinder, more compassionate, and understanding. And that's you. Bye.